On August 22, 2025, 23-year-old Lryna Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee, tragically lost her life in Charlotte, North Carolina. While riding a light rail, she was randomly attacked by DeCarlos Brown Jr., a man struggling with severe mental illness. What followed was a story that highlighted the failings in mental health care, the refugee experience in the U.S., and the ethical challenges surrounding the sharing of graphic content on social media. This is the story of Lryna's tragic murder, a story of lost dreams, systemic failure, and the lasting impact of untreated mental illness. Lryna Zarutska's story began far from the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina. Born in Ukraine, Lryna grew up amid political unrest and violence. She watched her country spiral into chaos, experiencing the devastating effects of war. Her family's life was torn apart by bombings, constant fear, and a lack of basic needs. As a young woman, Lryna dreamed of a better life, far from the devastation that surrounded her in Ukraine. In 2022, Lryna, like many others, fled her war-torn homeland in search of safety. She came to the United States, a place that promised peace, opportunity, and a fresh start. But for many refugees, adjusting to a new country is never easy. Language barriers, financial instability, and the overwhelming challenge of starting over in a foreign land can be more difficult than imagined. Lryna, despite her optimism and resilience, faced these challenges every day. She worked hard, often in multiple low-paying jobs, to support herself and send money back to her family. She yearned for the day when she could finally settle in the U.S., apply for citizenship, and live a peaceful life. But on that fateful day, Lryna was caught in an unimaginable tragedy that would shatter her hopes and dreams. For Lryna's family, the circulation of the video was an additional layer of trauma. They were already mourning the loss of their daughter, but now they were forced to relive her final moments as the video spread across social media. The ethics of sharing graphic content are complex, and it's clear that social media platforms must take responsibility for the harm caused by these videos. As viewers, we must also ask ourselves whether it's appropriate to consume and share such content. While it's easy to become desensitized to violence in the digital age, it's important to remember that the individuals involved are real people, not just characters in a video. The spread of graphic footage is a reminder of the need for greater sensitivity and respect when it comes to sharing violent content. Lryna Zarutska's death was a senseless tragedy, but it also serves as a call to action. Her murder highlights the need for systemic change in multiple areas: mental health care, refugee support, and the ethical treatment of graphic content on social media. Mental health care in the U.S. must be reformed to ensure that individuals suffering from severe conditions receive the treatment they need before tragedy strikes. Refugees must be given better resources and support to help them integrate into society and live safely. And social media platforms must take responsibility for the content they allow to be shared, particularly when it comes to graphic violence. While the loss of Lryna is heartbreaking, her story can spark the change that's so desperately needed. We must work to create a future where tragedies like hers are no longer common, and where those in need of care are given the resources and support to lead healthy, fulfilling lives. Lryna's death should not be in vain. We owe it to her and to all victims of violence to make the necessary changes to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Many refugees, like Lryna, are left without a robust support system. They are often placed in neighborhoods with high crime rates, where they become targets for violence. Without access to education, healthcare, or social services, refugees are left to navigate a hostile environment on their own. In the case of Lryna, the system's failure was particularly evident. She was a young woman fleeing war, hoping to rebuild her life in the U.S. But instead of finding peace, she was met with violence. Her murder exposes the vulnerability of refugees and the inadequate support they often receive once they arrive in the U.S. It's clear that the system must do more to ensure the safety and well-being of refugees. Providing access to housing, employment, mental health services, and community integration programs would go a long way in preventing tragedies like Lryna's. But for now, Lryna's death serves as a stark reminder that the U.S. must do more to protect its most vulnerable citizens, especially those who are just beginning to rebuild their lives after fleeing violence. The release of surveillance footage showing the brutal attack on Lryna Zarutska sparked widespread outrage, but it also raised ethical questions about the distribution of graphic content online. While some people felt it was important for the public to see the reality of the crime, others argued that circulating such disturbing footage was harmful and disrespectful to Lryna's memory and her grieving family. The ethical dilemma surrounding the sharing of graphic content is one that has been discussed extensively in recent years. On one hand, the spread of violent footage can serve as a tool for awareness, drawing attention to important issues like mental health, violence, and refugee safety. But on the other hand, it can cause significant harm to those directly involved in the incident. The mental health system in the United States has long been criticized for its inability to provide adequate care for people suffering from conditions like schizophrenia. According to experts, there are millions of individuals living with untreated mental health conditions, many of whom are caught in a cycle of homelessness, incarceration, and violence. Brown's case is tragically not unique. He had been in and out of the system for years, but his mental health struggles were never properly addressed. He was in desperate need of care, but no one was there to provide it. Had Brown been given proper treatment, Lryna's death could have been prevented. This situation also raises the question of the availability of mental health care for people of all backgrounds. In many cases, mental health care is simply not accessible to those who need it most. Without proper funding, resources, and access to therapy and medication, individuals like Brown are left to fend for themselves, often with tragic consequences. Mental health care is an issue that affects people across all walks of life, but those with the fewest resources, like homeless individuals and refugees, are often the most vulnerable. Lryna's murder underscores the urgent need for comprehensive mental health reform in the U.S. to ensure that people suffering from severe mental illness receive the care they need before it's too late. Lryna's tragic death also brings to light the challenges faced by refugees who come to the United States seeking safety and a better future. Refugees are often exposed to significant risks upon arrival. They face not only the trauma of war but also the struggles of adjusting to a new country. Language barriers, financial instability, and cultural differences can make it incredibly difficult to integrate into society. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Lryna boarded the light rail in Charlotte, North Carolina. She had just finished a long day of work and was looking forward to a quiet ride home. The sun was setting, and the streets of Charlotte were bustling with life. But on that train ride, something sinister was about to unfold. DeCarlos Brown Jr., a 34-year-old man with a history of mental illness, approached Lryna. According to witnesses, Brown had been acting erratically on the train. He was visibly agitated, his movements unpredictable. And then, without warning, he attacked Lryna. Brown allegedly stabbed her multiple times in a brutal and senseless act of violence. The horror of the attack was captured on surveillance footage, which would later be shared widely online, further compounding the devastation for Lryna's family. Brown, who had a long history of untreated schizophrenia, had been off his medication for months prior to the attack. He had been living in a nearby homeless shelter and had previously been arrested multiple times for violent outbursts. However, his mental health issues had never been adequately addressed. Despite his clear need for psychiatric care, Brown had slipped through the cracks in the system. Lryna's death was not just another random act of violence. It was a symptom of a much larger issue, the failure to provide adequate mental health care for those who need it the most. It also highlighted the vulnerability of refugees who, like Lryna, come to the U.S. with hopes for a better life but find themselves in increasingly unsafe and uncertain circumstances. Lryna Zarutska's murder prompted a nationwide conversation about mental health in America. Brown's condition, schizophrenia, is a severe mental illness that affects how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. When untreated, individuals with schizophrenia can experience delusions, hallucinations, and extreme paranoia, making them a danger to themselves and others.